Hi, I'm Renee Rochelle, the founder and president of One True Match. I'm here to help you find and cultivate the love of your life. For over a decade, I've dedicated my life to the importance, purpose, and dynamic of human relationships. My team and I are disciplined by faith, love, and integrity to help our clients find the quality relationship they've always dreamt of. Each week, I will be sharing the tools and tips I've learned that have rooted my success as a matchmaker with other leaders around the world. Hello, loves. Welcome back. I am so excited to be here with one of our own, Stephen Losardo, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist up in Illinois. We miss him all the time, but he also practices with clients and all over in Colorado and Florida. We someday hope he'll come back here, which is where we originally connected. And we love working together when we can, obviously mostly with our single clients, but also what he is so amazing at is working with our couples who are now engaged or have been married or just really trying to go through the journey of life once they meet that love of their life, because that's when we say really the work begins, right? So say hello, Stephen, to everyone. And we can't wait to get into the topic we're going to talk about today, which is relationship triggers.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. This is my first time on the podcast, so it's an exciting day here for me. Looking forward to having a conversation here about relationship triggers and sort of talking through some scenarios with Renee and kind of see some things that are common that come up and maybe some little tips or tricks on what to do with those.
Right. So when it comes to relationship triggers, which I feel like you and I, Stephen, we're talking about this all the time. So that's why we're like, we have to do a podcast on this. This is how we come up with a lot of the ideas, or, just from experiences. We're talking on a weekly basis of like, how do we help our clients succeed in all areas of life? And without love and relationships, you kind of can feel lonely at times. So, if you're listening out there, we always say if you're dating, single, engaged, or married, the reality of it is, hopefully you take something from this. So Stephen and I talk all the time, like sex, affection, boundaries, quality time, words of affirmation, all of that plays into an emotional trigger that a lot of us have. And it could be as simple as we were talking the other day. Like, why is it when you're in a hurry, you seem to get every single red light? Why? Why is that? And you think to yourself, you're upset at the red light that keeps happening, or the slow people that are driving in the fast lane, or all those things that can trigger an emotional frustration, right? And because we are strong in our faith, or you should be, obviously, if you're listening to this, or maybe it's something you're looking for and seeking to have more, those are the moments that I say, okay, God, literally, you take the wheel. Maybe not literally, but literally I'm giving this to you. And instead of being frustrated, I am going to say, God is protecting me from whatever is ahead. That might be an accident or whatever I need to slow down because I'm going too fast. And it's just those moments where I say are kind of like God wink moments that are little trigger buttons to say, I need to slow down. If I'm 5 minutes late or if I'm 10 minutes late, there's a reason for that behind whatever the trigger is that was making me frustrated, to like stop and take a deep breath. Why I'm so excited to have Stephen on here is to ask him some questions, even more specifically, being obviously a therapist and talking to couples, that we can talk about while we're single, while we're coupled, that you see is a common trigger, whether single, dating, engaged, or married, that people experience when it comes to those relationship triggers.
Yeah, I think first, singleness is not a disease, right? I think getting comfortable in that. I have a client coming up next, so I had my pen in my hand. Just being comfortable in that and understanding what that is, that could be part of a calling, a season, a life for some people. That's okay. But certainly, if we're not comfortable in that period, in those seasons, well, what's causing us to not be comfortable during that time? And sometimes an example might be, we had another relationship and we had a loss, we didn't grieve that. And so that can be triggering. So that shows up, we start to date, that can show up in our dating. So the singleness can be a good time to heal some of those things that we've got from prior relationships, family origin stuff, sometimes the first cut is the deepest with mom or dad or caregiver. I just want to highlight that you can be healthy and be single and still be in community with people who are coupled, engaged or married, because that could be a strength for you because you're building out the community. Get ready for your relationship if you don't have that. And then in terms of relationship, it's similar. If you kind of bring that stuff in, different things can trigger. Either as a couple you can trigger, or individually it can get triggered. So if I have a lot of anxiety and I haven't done much work around that, and it might be around sort of separation, not spending enough time with that other person. Like I need to know where they are every 5, 10, 15 minutes. Well, that might not go too well in the relationship. And so that can be something that can be triggering.
Which is a really good point. I mean, the reality of it is when you choose, and again, I can't express this, it feels like in every podcast, a relationship with somebody is a choice. So if you choose to want to be coupled, or you choose to want to have friends, or you choose to want to be in a relationship, you also have to realize you're bringing two totally different people that are coming together from two totally different backgrounds that may have triggers that you don't ever even see until they come up. So the longer we spend time with somebody, those triggers kind of become more evident. And, we talk about it all the time. It's knowing and spending time with yourself to know what these triggers are. So going forward, you absolutely have a better idea how to articulate and explain that to somebody when those little moments happen. Like I know personally myself, how many times after years of some experience, obviously, with relationships, and it's the biggest reason why I do it today, what I do, is to know now there's areas that I know I get maybe a little escalated, or I get a little bit like those triggers. And so I have to stop, take a deep breath, spend that time, and really talk that through with a partner so that they don't take it personal, and that they can also help me to be the best version of myself that I want to be. We talk to our couples now, as well as when we're talking to our singles all the time about how they were in past relationships, whether it's, heaven forbid, they've been cheated on, or whether it be, to the other extreme where some people just don't have a lot of relationship experience because they have been, so much focusing, obviously, in their love for God, and they just don't want to get into relationship with obviously the wrong person and things like that. And so some of their triggers are they don't know how to open up and allow God to come through the opportunities that are also learned about yourself through relationships. Now, I'm not sitting here, none of us are sitting here saying just get into a relationship to have an opportunity. No, date with intention. And obviously pick and choose the right person that you believe is for you. But I'm just saying, like, so many times people in our business, they think, well, they don't have this, or they don't have that, or they don't. Well, how do you know? Because at the end of the day, two people, and Stephen can speak on this, that you see then together, how they really create their own language of how they communicate. And I know Stephen, just like all of us, say at the end of the day, the root of a good solid foundation of a healthy relationship going forward is communication style. So think about the things that trigger you, and think about why those things are triggering you, so that you can really get to the root, which is good communication, of how to be better at that, but also accept the fact that you choose to want to be in a relationship. So you have to be willing to accept the imperfectness that we all have inside of us to, work on that with a partner.
Yeah, and I think when you say work, people are like, what? This relationship's going to be work? It's not going to be like a Notebook or whatever the latest movie is there. The love romance, and, it ends perfect, but we don't see the rest of the relationship when the movie ends. But there's going to be work involved, and there's going to be things that come up. And you want to see how the person responds to when situations occur. How do people get to the other side of pain when that comes in their lives? And how do we navigate that together then as a couple? It's important to understand that stuff and see how we're interacting. And, everyone's got a different personality type. And when those kind of come together, and the moment of reactivity we have to understand as a couple how to navigate that. And you talked about hitting that pause for yourself, and that might be all you need because you understand yourself. But sometimes you got to take a time out as a couple. You take a break, and there's a lot of data around this Gottman research where your pulse gets above 85 beats per minute. You got to go take a time out for about 20 minutes. I work with couples on this. You want to make sure that the other person, if I'm working with someone individually, I'm like, okay, you got to let them know what your game plan is. Don't just take a time out and walk off. Because then the other person probably might feel like they have this fear of abandonment. And the other person just walked off and said, I'll come back later. But you kind of want to work through, hey, we're going to take the time out, reschedule when I come back, continue to talk on stuff and work through it. Because otherwise we'll just be continuously running through these red lights that you noted earlier, get into a lot of problems instead of stopping. As the famous theologian Vanilla Ice said, stop, collaborate, and listen for a little bit, right?
Which is so true. I mean, we are all creatures of habit, right? So what we continuously did in the past, we're going to continuously do in the future. And so I think when, we're talking to singles all day long, and I don't ever want to say there's a reason why somebody's single. A lot of it has to do with options, but also a lot of that does have to do when we do what we call like a deep dive. We are literally diving into things that have been triggers along their past. And this is why we love psychologists and therapists and everything else, because they can really help to ask the questions that nobody has been asked. And I always said, like when I was a little kid and in high school, I remember thinking, if my job was to just ask everybody kind of their life story, how cool of a job would that be? Because then we can really dive into who they are. And people don't ask that question enough. And of course, nobody has enough time to do that. I'm blessed and fortunate, all of us, that we get to do that really for a living. But when you ask yourself that, and I know we've done a podcast on this, and I don't want to get off the topic of triggers, but there'll be little moments, if you've never done a deep dive of your life before, whether it be with a therapist or a psychologist. We've got some great ones here, obviously. We can highly recommend if you write in and let us know. But also for your own self-reflection, when you have that time to yourself and think, no one's perfect, and I choose to want to be in a relationship. So I need to put on my big girl pants, my big girl boy pants, whatever, and really focus on what it is that's most important to you that you want in a relationship, and how some of maybe those triggers to you in the past is why you're not getting that relationship, because of whatever your answer is to that question. So obviously, Stephen, you talking more into the deeper dive more regularly than we, ask kind of the more surface questions, and then we dive deeper. What would you say would be like the number one trigger, if there is one, or the top like couple triggers that you find are common?
If we talked about communication earlier. I think one big thing is not listening. We all need to listen better. And it's not just the guys. And what listening means is to really just have two different roles in that conversation. You got one person listening and one person speaking. And be a good listener. I will slow it down in session so much. I have someone taking notes. So listeners taking notes. I'm like, what did you hear her say? Repeat the whole thing back, get real good at it, and then go through the process, or him, and then go through the process of paraphrasing and then validating at the end. So validating their experience is very important. And then you switch roles, and because two people have two different perspectives, you want to get to know their perspective. You want to get to know them. You want to get in a position of, I'm so excited to be this person. Like if you got to pick Tom Brady, I love Tom Brady, so I'll pick him every time. I pretend I'm not hanging out with Tom Brady. I need to know everything about him. It's like every day, because there's so much to learn about ourselves for our whole lives in that journey, and just for the other person. But the triggers, when we're not heard, when we're not understood, that brings up a lot of different stuff. It could be trauma from the past that gets reactivated. We do our best to work on stuff if we go through therapy, let's say, and there are traumas, but they get triggered. And when the other person is not listening, it makes things a lot harder to kind of work through. It doesn't mean that's the other person's problem to resolve, but in a couple relationship, you get hurt in a relationship, you can heal in a relationship too. So there can be additional healing, but if we're not good listeners, we're not getting too far.
Which is so true. And I think the reality of it is the majority of people move too fast and furious too early on in relationships, which then all of those little triggers start to surface and become like scar tissue, basically, that are building up and building up and building up. That then the littlest things, when you actually do meet that person and you're having, you're in a marriage or in a relationship, those things, when it comes to, like we talked about earlier, sex, that attraction, that connection may be skewed because of things that have happened in the past that you really haven't understood. Stephen, I'm sure you know too, one of the biggest reasons why couples have the challenges that they do is between like sex, what do they say, also money and family dynamics of just how things happen. And so maybe you've had something in your past that really was uncomfortable. And so where I'm going with this is I think it's so important between communication and listening and all those other things is that you take the time to really get to know someone. We live in a fast-paced world today where people are like, oh, on to the next. And they wonder why the relationship never took flight, because all it was, am I attracted to them? Do I want to live where they live? Do I like their lifestyle? But what does that actually have to do with a long-term relationship when you're there with your best friend? Heaven forbid, the whole world could go fall apart around you and you don't have anything. And so, I'm not trying to get off the topic of triggers, but I think there's little points in our life that we kind of also create these triggers that hold us back as well from amazing opportunities that are right in front of us that God wants us to see.
Yeah, we can get caught up in these narratives of the past, right? Or we connect these meanings to different situations, and then we tie that to, let's say, love. I ask that question, well, what does love mean to you, when I have a couple or individual in the room? And I'm like surprised that there's like this pause. And then there's another pause. I'm like, well, is it an emotion, do you think? Is it like what? And the meaning of that both have, right? And when that comes into that relationship, is that lining up? Is there shared meaning with that? Is there shared meaning with sex? Is there shared meaning with marriage? Those things can impact, past experiences inform your current circumstances, and what are your future hopes and dreams? That's an Andy Stanley line right there, by the way. Taking a look at those things are important because they inform us, and we can get these mantras about things that can be unhealthy. They can become very distorted, if you will, in terms of our thought life too, that come into that particular topic. And I think one thing you kind of hinted on it earlier, it's the ability, one characteristic that's good is, hey, we're going to have some junk. It's just going to just go wrong, but are we committed to being in a relationship? Do we want to, work through stuff, or are we going to just be emotionally unavailable?
Right. Which, of course, on that note too, is like you said earlier, the word work sounds awful to people. People are like, why do I want work when it comes to a relationship? Look at it more like a career. There's a difference between a job and a career. A career is something that you work hard at, you should be passionate about, which also offsets all the other areas of your life. With that said, a relationship is a career. And I know Stephen will say that all the time, and it's very rewarding. And when you're in a career, you can achieve the goals that you want if you set them and you understand them.
Yeah, and this is sort of a role of many roles, and part of your, if I call the life a career, if this is going really well, you got the couple, and there's all different terms of the we us thing, and two individuals and two passions that could be the same or similar about your mission, what you've been called to do. If that relationship is going well, you're supporting each other, you're going to be stronger in those areas for the Lord, both as individuals and as a couple, and as if you have decided to have kids and family in those roles as well. It's so crucial to be able to have that. What a beautiful thing to have the Lord sort of put two people together. You have to grind it out with fear and trembling as part of your relationship as well.
Which is so true, which is so true. So what I would love to encourage every listener out there and anybody that forwards this on to anybody else is we say, you know, with safe measures when you're not driving maybe or whatever, is to write down little things like think about it. So many times people want to brush things under the rug or like ignore these little moments where they're getting, like you're calling it, their blood pressure is above 85 and they're just like beyond raging mad and they don't know what to do about it. Those are the moments. Grab a notepad, grab out your cell phone, do whatever where you write it down and it sounds negative. I know like our life coaches will always say, use positive reinforcement. Well, it is. If we don't point out the triggers or whatever those things are that are happening, like I use the red light scenario, whatever it is, or when you're on a date, maybe somebody, you makes them feel uncomfortable because they put their arm, you know, on you and it's like too soon, you know, just tell them that instead of like feeling like, oh, this is not the right person because they did that. Just say, you know what, I really like you and I really want to get to know you and I'd love to get to know you more and more and go on several dates. But until like we know if this relationship is going to grow into something forward, I want to take a, like, I want the affection to grow organically or something like that. So somebody's not offended to think, oh, that's why I just ghosted that person. I didn't want to call him back. But it's also open communication. If somebody's offended by that open communication, to say, I just want to take my time when it comes to like holding hands or doing something like that, then they're not the one for you. But too many times I think people don't say things because they don't actually know the things that are triggering them. And then they continue to go on these dates and then they continue to like feel this way. And they've never communicated that with somebody. So what I'm encouraging, I guess we're encouraging you to do is write those triggers down. If it's something that you feel, wow, those are really big things, seek help for that, you know, like dive into it until you're clarified what to do. And I think that that'll really help in any future relationship that you have or the relationship you're even in when you wonder, why am I lonely in this relationship? Why are things not more exciting? How do I get the best out of this relationship? And we all know it begins with yourself. It begins with your own knowledge. It begins with like education and communication and listening so that you can articulate those feelings and emotions to somebody that you want to, again, is the key word, in a relationship with. Do you have any other things that you can add in, Stephen, before I know these times always go by so fast? So we're going to have you back on, of course, to talk about other topics when it comes to our human mind that is our most powerful tool and asset we have.
Yeah, just very quick, I think just to add on to that, it's sort of, also, you know, it's okay to spend time and thought, and you might need to take a break from dating, and that's okay too. And if you think that that person's the one, well, they'll wait, right?
Slow and steady always wins the race, I say. Slow and steady. Don't rush it.
I gotta go work on my junk. I realize this stuff's coming up. It's impacting the relationship. And your fear is that they're going to disappear because you think it's a great person. Well, you know, if they want to be with you, they will choose to wait, right? And then there's another, now you got information about they are, you know, see if they're true to their word, if they say you're going to wait and that kind of thing. So you get information there. And if they do wait, then that's, you know, it's a powerful thing as well. The other thing is sometimes it's not your fault, right? So in your example, you're assertive, gave an assertive example about, hey, it's not a good time to maybe, you know, grace my arm like that, or however you worded that. But, you know, and do we, you know, how they kind of respond to that after is information, because they might do it again the next time, right? But your assertiveness, you might not have that because you haven't taken the time to heal some stuff to be able to say that right in that moment, because we think this is the right person too. So it's kind of twofold there.
It's so true. So, I mean, you have to be 100% complete yourself, as everybody knows this, or maybe they know it, but they've never really thought it through, to be ready for a relationship. And part of that readiness, when we ask people all day long on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being highest, how ready Are you, if you were to meet that person to commit to a relationship and be involved, it means you can communicate well who you are, what you feel. It's not domineering either, because you're also asking somebody else to come into your life, but is accepting and understanding and saying, I know I can be better at this, falling on your sword and say, I hope you're the one that can help me make it better at this, instead of like accusing somebody or false, judging somebody that I think people do all day long. And that's what makes relationships so hard to begin and continue and to last. So we hope that you have found this information helpful, useful, and that you share it to anybody and everybody else that you know. And we're here for you when it comes to all things relationships, to be in the right relationship with the right person. And we love these little moments that we get to be in your ear and just shower you with all the love that we feel every day. And you should as well, by our one and only God that brings us such peace and love on a daily basis. So remember that when you're in your trigger moments, let God take the wheel on all things first, and all things will come together in his perfect timing. So we're going to love and leave you. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us. And we will be definitely doing this again, talking about more topics.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Blessed.
It's been another great talk on this episode of One True Talks by Renee Rochelle. I look forward to our next chat. Please write in your questions and comments so I can be sure to talk about whatever it is you want to discuss in our next upcoming episode. Lots of love. God bless. XOXO.